guys, this is Kat from ShadowCat Looming, and today we will be making BB-8, a 3D little guy. My husband loves the Star Wars series, and we just went to go see the new movie, and I fell in love with BB-8, and I wanted to have my own little handheld BB-8. So I went and made BB-8. I also made a stand for him. If you want to do the stand like the official little BB-8 robot that's running around, this black part you'll use as gray. I'm not sure if I have enough, so I'll be doing this one in black, and I might do a black one at the end or a gray one. But the little stand actually allows the BB-8 to stand up and be 3D there. So hopefully you guys enjoy him, and hopefully he's going to be a fun little make here. I love that the colors are very simple this time. We are only using 4 colors, so you'll want to have some gray. You want to have some black. I use the jelly orange, and then I also use the glow-in-the-dark white, which actually makes for a pretty cool picture of him at nighttime. So, alright, you'll also want to have the rainbow loom board. Reason being is that one is the adjustable board, and we will want to take out this middle row and this blue piece. So go ahead and do that right now. It's best to use the rainbow loom hook. Just put it right in the back there and rock it up a little bit on all 4 sections, and that makes the blue piece movable. Take the blue piece out. Then you can kind of just lift up a little bit on both ends on that middle row there, and then remove the middle row. And those pieces you can set aside. Don't lose them, but you can set them aside because we will not need them for the entire project. Now, the way I'm gonna suggest to have it set up is, if you're looking at it top to bottom, they're going to look like little rainbows. And then we want to take that and we want to turn it to the left. So the top goes to the left. And this way it looks like little C's. And that's the way we're going to set it up. Both rows are the same, and they are even on both ends. I've got my little blue pieces mostly toward the end for the most support. And then when we put the bands on, some of the time it's not going to matter the order, and some of the time it's very crucial that you go in the same order color patterns as me, because as we go to make the little circles on his side like that, and the little colors in the center, if you're using the same order pattern that I am, then it's going to line up a lot better, and it's actually going to look like little circles like he has on the side of him. So, if we just get in the habit of doing it right from the beginning, we'll be good when we get to the important parts, and just keep following along. We will start with his head. So our first 2 bands are going to be 2 white bands. Now, when we start, it doesn't matter as long as you get right around the middle that we're toward the middle. When we do the body, it's actually going to matter that we start exactly in the middle where I start, because we're going to be using the whole board on that. So this one, we'll take 1 white band and we'll go from one peg side to the other peg side. But before we place it, we'll put 1 twist in it. We'll place it. Do the same thing, crisscrossing that. So 1 white band going across the body. Put 1 twist in it, and we'll place that there. Our next layer is going to be all gray. So we're going to do all 4 bands, going just around the outer edge like this, and all gray. Now we'll take the rainbow loom hook, and I find the best way a lot of the time is to actually look at it from the side. When you look at it from the side, you can see that there's 2 bands on this peg, the top 2 that are gray, and the bottom one that's white. We're going to reach in from the side, so from the side, we're going to grab just that white band and we're going to pull it out, up, and over to the center, and we're going to let go of it there. We're going to do that on each one. Let's see. Be very careful not to knock off those top gray bands. And as we do this process all the way through, you're going to want to be careful not to knock off the top bands. Now, if I go too fast for you at any point, because as you start to get the pattern down, I'll go a little faster, just go ahead and pause the video, do to the point I am, and then continue on. So, now we have all of the gray down. We're going to expand. Remember, whenever you've picked it up and moved it around and we set it back down, we want to be looking at the C shape again. So now we're going to expand 2. So we'll expand the top left and the bottom right. When we do expansions, we actually want to take always the band that's going across the bottom. Now sometimes this band will be nice and easy and on top, like this one where I can lift up this top band, pick it up, move it to the next peg down, and it's not a problem. Sometimes this band is going to be underneath this band. In that case, you'll see me temporarily move that one to get to the top band, or the bottom band, in order to move it down. So that is actually going to be the case on this other one here. I want to move the band that's going across the top here, and that one's underneath. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up this top band, we're going to just move it across for a moment, then we're going to go back and we're going to grab this bottom band, we're going to move it up a peg, then we're going to go back to where we put that temporary holding band, we're going to re-pick it up, we're going to put it back on that same peg again. So now you should have more of a diamond shape than a square shape going. You should be on 6 different pegs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So always push your bands down before you move on, because we're going to be having layers on top of layers. Now we're going to place all white bands. So 6 white bands are going to go to this layer. So we'll start the bottom left to get in the habit of doing it for when the colors actually do change. I'll just place 6 bands going all the way around. Okay, same thing as what we did a minute ago. This time the bottom layer is going to be the gray bands, and there's actually going to be 2 bands on some of them and single bands on others. So we always want to get all of the gray bands, always the entire row below it. So on the top left we'll be doing 2 bands, pulling them out, up and over, right to the center. The middle one is 1 single band, The bottom left is one single band. Then we'll do the same on the other side. The top one's going to be one single band. The middle one's going to be one single band. And the bottom right one is going to be two bands. And then go ahead and push them back down. Going to expand two again. So this time we always want to keep things even as we move along. When we expand, we're going to expand the top right and the bottom left. We want to always get the band that's going across the center there. In this case, you can always move your bands to if you need to see what's what. In this case, we want to get to the bottom band. So we need to move the top band temporarily. So we're going to pick up the top band. I'm just going to move it right across here. Set it there temporarily. Then we're going to take that bottom right one. We're going to move it down a peg. Then we're going to go retrieve that one that we put there temporarily. We're going to put it back on its original peg. Now hold the hook in whatever angle you need to properly get things to move. But you always want to be careful that you're not having the band in the swoop here and then trying to bend it backwards, because it will slip right off there, and you don't want to do that when there's lots of bands connecting in between, because it's sometimes a little hard to refigure out how that goes. So just a little tip of advice. It can be done, you can get it back to normal, but it's a little trickier. And then on this one over here, it's going to be the top band. So we just need to take off the top band, move it over here. Now see, in this case, because my hook is over here, I'm always keeping the hook away from the direction I'm pulling the band. So there's no chance of slipping the band off of the hook. Then I just go right to the center to release. So now we should have more of a rectangle shape. At this point, we're going to be placing 8 bands, and they're going to be all orange. So we'll start at the bottom left. Place 1 band. This whole project, unless I tell you differently, is 1 band going all the way around. Same thing as what we've been doing. We want to get the full, complete bottom layer. And in that case, that is all the white. This top left one's going to be 1 band, 1 band, 2 bands, 2 bands. Let's go ahead and grab those and loop those over. On the other side, the top right one, it's going to be 2 bands, 2 bands, 1 band, 1 band. So go ahead and loop those over. Push them all down again for the next layer. We're going to need to start attaching the eyes at this layer. So we'll just set this temporarily aside and we'll go make 2, well, I call them eyes. I guess they're the little cameras at the top of his head. So we're going to go make those right now. If you have your rainbow loom hook, that'll work for making these. You'll also want something to hold them on. 2 crochet hooks are good for holding them. If you can, it's even better to get 2 different colored crochet hooks, because then you can remember what's always going to be the top, the bottom, so forth. Otherwise, at Party on Supplies, my family's store, we also sell things like holding sticks like this. It's on our website, but they've actually got it listed under barware because it does go under 2 categories and not under Rainbow Loom stuff yet. So that's where it is on the website if you go there. Today I'm going to actually use the 2 holding sticks because I've got 2 different colors and they're nice and contrasting, and you can see pretty easily what they are. So we're going to put the eyes on that, and I'm going to make the eyes with a latch hook. So you guys will get to learn a little bit about a latch hook. A latch hook is a hook that has a little latch on it like that, and it opens and closes with the use of the bands. So it makes it a little bit easier. If you're using the normal hook, it's pretty much going to be the same exact thing. So I'll just show you where the little difference is. And we want to have 4 black bands and 2 white bands for 1, and then 2 black bands and 2 white bands for the other. So let's start with the small eye. Actually, I'll start with the normal Rainbow Loom hook for those of you that don't have a latch hook. You can see how this is done. The small eye, as I'm calling it, is going to be the easier one to do. We'll take the 2 black bands, and we'll keep them together, because that way they'll actually tend to stay a little bit better and together as we loop them. We'll put them on our hook, both together. I use my finger to hold them on, so it's a little bit more secure. We'll pull out the bands, give a twist, loop it around the hook. So now you've got 1, 2 sets of 2 bands. We'll hold that down, we'll loop it around once more, so you have 1, 2, 3 sets of 2 bands. We'll let that go. Now, I do a little spinning thing here, which kind of evens it up, so if you pulled it really tight or anything like that, it'll hopefully be a little more forgiving and go back together, because you want it to look as one big portion here. So then we'll take the 2 white bands. I put them on my finger to make it a little bit easier. And I take the hook, go through, and we want to slide all of these black bands onto the white bands there. Sometimes it's as easy as just sliding it down. Sometimes you've got to actually pick up and move individually the bands. So whatever you need to do to go ahead and get them onto that set there. And then once they're on that set there, you can take the holding stick. We're going to take 1 band, put on the holding stick, and keep 1 band on our finger. Same thing on the other side. We're going to take the same band that's on our stick, and we're going to put the other end. Let me see if I can get this up closer to the camera and get in the view of the camera. Alright, so we've got the 2 split ends already, and then the first band on my hook is the one that matches what's on the stick. So I'm going to slide the black dot down a bit. I'm going to get 1 of the 2 bands on my hook here, or holding stick. Slide that off of the end there. So now, if you can see, I've got 1 of the white bands going through the little black dot and on that stick. Then I've got the other 2 ends right now on the holding hook. One way to kind of check that you've got the same white band going through, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this in the camera, I think you kind of can right there, is that you can pull it apart and see all the way through in the center. If you kind of see a crisscross, then you might have the wrong one. It's not as important if you really can't get them the correct direction. It just makes it a little more even when putting it on. So if you really can't get there, that's fine. But if you can, all the better. Cool. I'm just a perfectionist that likes to get all the details in there. for those of you that like that too. So, oh, I just transferred from my hook onto the other holding stick there. To transfer, it's really simple. If you missed what I did there, you basically pull up right there. You'll see that little triangle spot in there. And you just stick your new hook through there, making sure to get both of the bands on there, and then you pull out the other one. So there is one, and that's the smaller one. Now we'll need to make a larger one, same idea. This one I'm going to show you guys on the latch hook. And this is the 4 black bands. So we're going to start with that. So gather up all 4 black bands together. If you're doing it on a latch hook, you want to have your latch open. You're going to hold down your latch so it doesn't flop up in the middle of trying to do anything. I usually hold the bands to the latch there. And then we're going to pull these out, and we're going to loop around 1 and 2 times, so that we are going to have 1, 2, and 3 sets of black bands on there. And let go. Now, using the latch hook, be careful that no bands get stuck behind the latch prior to the time that you need them to be back there, because opening it will slice through your bands. So one drawback of using the latch hook, but in most cases I find it to be a lot better. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. So at this point, if you have a latch hook, you're going to slide all of those bands back past your little latch. If you have a normal hook, you're just going to keep them sitting there. Now grab the 2 white bands. We're going to do the same thing as we did for this other camera here, camera eye. So we're going to put the 2 bands here, and we're going to slide all of those black bands, or move them individually, or whatever you need to do to get those black bands onto those 2 white bands. With a latch hook, if you take and you close that latch, you can slide. You gotta do it in a quick motion so nothing goes through and gets stuck down here. But you can slide all those bands right onto the 2 bands all at once. So that's why I like using the latch hook. You can either use the same set of 2 holding sticks that we used a minute ago. Usually I do that, but I think just to be a little easier for you guys to see, I might actually try and put it on the crochet hooks here. So I'll use at least the 2 different colored ones, and hopefully you guys can see that. So again, take one of the bands from your finger onto the crochet hook. Take the matching end off of the normal hook. At that point I unhooked my other one. I didn't mean to do that. There we go. And then pull apart, confirm that they are the correct matching bands. And I keep sliding that off. That's fine. So I'm just going to move that hook away. Alright, and then take the other set of bands, slide it through your other holding stick or whatever you're going to slide it through. Usually it's tight enough in there that if you do miss one and it comes off your hook temporarily, like you just saw, it's not going to fall apart. So don't get too worried. And now we have a big camera eye. So there are those 2. Alright, so bring your board back, if I haven't said that already, and we're going to put the big one in the center, so the small one can sit off on the side. And just before we do that, again, we want to expand. This time we're going to expand 4 pegs. So we're actually going to expand the 2 on the left to the left, 2, and the 2 on the right to the right. So again, it is going to matter the order on which the bands are laid down. Remember, you want to be looking at them C's. So we're going to take this top left one first. I think that might be a decent view there. And lift that one up and move it up 1 peg. Then we're going to do the same on the left side here. Going to take the top band, take it off, you can see where it shrinks up in the middle there, that's the same band as the one on the other side, because that's what we're looking for to happen. Always for that to be the same band going through here. We're going to move that one up. So there's 2 moved. Now we're going to do the same thing down here. We'll do the bottom right one first, because that one's the easier one. So we'll just pick up the band, top band, and move it down 1 peg. Now, when we go to do this top right one, it's the bottom band. So we're going to need to move that top band to get to that bottom band, but we're just moving it temporarily. So we'll grab that top band. I like to just move it straight across there. And if you need, you can always put a thumb right by it too, so you can not lose track where you moved it to. Then grab that bottom band, take it off, move it down a peg, and now you can see here that it's the same band going across. Then we'll go back, we'll re-grab that band that we temporarily moved, and we'll move it back to the peg it started at. So now if you count, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So our next section should be 12 bands going all around. These are going to be all white, and they're going to contain the first part of the big dot. Now, when placing the big dot, you can do it a couple different ways. You can either use another hook and take one band off and place it on, same thing on the other one. Or you can use, if you're on a crochet hook, you can use the actual crochet hook end. Sometimes that's a little easier. Or if you like and you feel more comfortable with your fingers, you can always lift it up and put it on with your fingers. So I think I'm going to show you with the hook, just so you can see a little bit better, and hopefully my fingers don't get in the way there. When I do this, I can stretch it out. You can see the little triangle. You can go in right through there. Then you'll actually want to slide it a little bit toward the end of the hook or holding device that you're using. I'm only through one band here, so you can see one band moving here with me. Then we're going to put that as in the center as we can get. So 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1. So it's going to be the third one into the center there. The third peg down from the left side. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to put that one band, third peg from the bottom. So third peg from the top, third peg from the bottom. That's where our eye is going to go. If you look at it from the side, this one's not connected to anything, and it's going to remain like that for this layer. Go ahead now and place the rest of the white bands going all the way around. You don't need to place a white band where we just placed the little camera eye, because that is the white band of itself. So just skip that one as you're placing. After you've placed them all, same drill as what we've been doing. If you look from the other side, since we did have a crochet hook over on that one, your bottom layer is going to be your orange layer, your top is your white layer, and we're going to loop all of the oranges. The two middle pegs are going to be 2 bands and 2 bands on both sides, and then the end ones are going to be singles. So you might need to hold this down a little bit when you go to loop it. So we'll start on the harder side, where the hook is. And just loop those over. When you get to this one, you do want to act like this band is up here, even if it's being held down. So you'll want to make sure that you're going in under the 2 white bands to grab the 2 orange bands to loop them out and over. Same thing with the next peg. Make sure you're going under the 2 white bands to grab that orange 2 bands and loop it over. those down. Now we're on to layer 6. It's going to be the second half of the eye. And we're actually going to add the first half of the small camera eye. And the rest of the layer is going to be white. And we don't expand. Alright. So let's start with freeing up our hook right now that's hanging there, so we can have another one hanging in a minute. So I'm actually just going to use the hook itself. So I'm going to slide that down, and at this point I've got 2 bands close to the end of the hook. I'm going to hold my finger on one so one doesn't get away, and the other one I'm just going to place right on that peg. And I'm going to take the other one, place it on the second peg there. Again, we're still on those middle 2 pegs. Third one down from the top or the left, and third one from the right. So now that's placed, we can move our holding stick, and we can place our next one. Now, it is going to seem a little weird, but we actually want to place the next eye to the left of the first eye. Some designs that you make like this, you flip inside out. This is not one that you flip inside out. So we're actually making it, if you can imagine, from the top of the head going down. So here's the big eye, and there's going to be the small eye. There, I'm on view now. So there's the big eye, there's the small eye, and that's how they're going to look. So, and this is the top here. So, just if you don't get it, just go along with me. It'll make sense by the end. Alright, on this one, again we want to slide them down toward the end. Well, that bottom one I guess doesn't matter. And we're going to do it right next to where we place the first dot. So we'll take the first band there, just put that right on that one. Then we'll take the next band there. We'll slide it onto the next one there. And we'll leave this one just hanging over on the side, being cool there. So, and then the rest of these are going to be white bands all the way around to here. Remember, we just placed this one. This was a new place this round. So he's going to stay right where he is and count as his band. So this time it might get a little trickier to see what you are moving. We're going to flip it this way this time. If you can see here, we've got one layer on this side going all the way down, and we've got one layer on this side. Now this whole side is going to have 2 bands on every peg, and so is the other side. And then we're going to have 2 bands on the top. So every peg should have 4 bands total. We're always grabbing the bottom 2 bands. And the reason I say it's trickier is because it's all white this time. We're not changing colors like before. It was grab all the orange bands. So go ahead and go through, loop like we've been doing, the bottom 2 bands out, up, and over on each peg. And we are wanting to grab those bottom 2, both of them, the white bands. So just go ahead and do that all the way around. Remember again, when you get to the point where the little eyelet is being held down, you want to have 2 bands at the top, and we want to grab the 2 bands underneath. Move those over. Same thing with the next one. Make sure you've got 2 bands above the hook. Grab the 2 bands below the hook. Same thing with the next. It's a little easier this time without the holding stick being there. Then make sure as you go through that you don't leave any bands like that. That one almost slipped off there. And you want to make sure that those are back on their pegs before you continue on. Go ahead and push all those down. Okay. Our next layer, layer 7, it's going to be all white. And it's going to be the bottom portion here. I'm just going to slide that down. I'll use a hook so you guys can see a little bit better what I'm doing. I'm going to take that one band off the end there. I'm going to put it at the bottom peg there. Second to the left. I'm going to take the band off the other holding stick. I'm going to put it on the next peg, so that's the third to the left peg. And then the rest of that layer is all white. Now remember, this one was on the previous layer, so we do want to put a band there. And we want to put one in the beginning. Don't forget that beginning one. Okay, same thing as what we've been doing all the way through. Bottom 2 bands on all of them. They're going to pull out over into the center. Push them all down. I might need to actually start pushing down in between the pegs now too. Our next layer is going to be some changes. We're going to be doing some white and some orange. So this is when it starts to become important, if you want to do the same pattern as me, to go around the head. This is this part right here at the bottom of the neck area of the head, where you see some white, some orange. So we're going to kind of make it that mixture here. We're going to, again, remember to have your board so that you're looking at the C's. We're going to be starting always in this bottom left whenever I go with the coloring. So we're going to start with orange, then white, white, then orange, orange, and then white. And then that should take us an L shape. I'm going to flip the board around temporarily, just so we can start back at the bottom left here. We're going to do orange, white, orange, white, orange, and white. Then we're going to do a 180 flip on it, and we'll be back to where we were. Alright, so that's the pattern for just above the neck area. Same thing as always, go ahead and grab the bottom 2 bands, which in this case are the all white bands, and loop them to the center. If you guys make a BB-8, I think it'd be pretty cute if you took a picture and put on the site and I could see them and all, so let me know if you'd make any, how they come out and what they look like, especially if you start trying to make any other colors of BB-8s or anything like that. Alright. Again, push that layer down. That was layer 8. Now we are on to layer 9. Layer 9 is going to be, again, 12 bands going around. This layer is going to be all gray. Okay. Once you've got all the gray layer on, go ahead and loop the bottom 2 bands. Push that layer down. We're gonna shrink. So we're gonna condense now. When we condense, we're going to take both of the bands on the peg that we're moving from and move them to the next one. So we're going to condense the top right and the bottom left. So be careful you don't lose any bands in the process. I keep my hook facing away initially. I go down, grab the bands, take them off of that peg. Maybe I'll bring it up closer if you guys can see that better. So I'll take them off that peg and I'll move them to the next peg up. At this point, we've got 4 gray bands, 2 at the bottom and 2 at the top. We're going to now take the bottom 2 gray bands and loop them out, up, and over the top 2 bands. So that is a condense. We're going to do the same thing on this other side over here. So we'll take the bottom left 2, both of the bands, pick them up, move them to the peg above there. Now we've got 2 on the top and 2 gray bands on the bottom. Gonna move the 2 gray bands on the bottom out, up, and over to the center, and that is our other condense. Now we have more of that diamond kinda slanted shape going on again. This time we're down to 10 bands, layer 10, and it's going to be all white bands. Let's go ahead and start at the bottom left. Remember, looking at C shape. Same drill as what we've been doing. Grab the bottom 2 bands, loop them out, up, and over. These bottom 2 bands are going to be your gray bands. Back to 2 separate layers, so that's kind of nice again. And push those down a bit. Getting pretty tight, so I think we need to push down individually. Back, so you're looking at the C's again if you've moved it all around. You'll always want to start with looking at the C's. Alright, we're going to shrink 4 now. So we're going to condense 4, which means it's going to keep the same shape, but it's going to be a lot smaller suddenly. And when we do that, we always want to condense with the farthest reaching points, because those bands are being stretched the most, and since we're doing that point and this point, we don't want to stretch it a lot more by moving this one first. So we'll start with the bottom right one, pick up both of those bands, move them up to the next peg. Let's see if it better there. Grab the bottom 2 bands, pull them out, up, and over. So now that we've done the bottom right, we're going to do the top right. So this, we're going to take the 2 bands from this peg, take them off, going to move them back a peg, and then we're going to take the bottom 2 bands from that peg, move them out, up, and over. So now we've condensed the right 2 to be smaller. We're going to do the same thing on the left side here. So we'll condense the top left one first, the farthest one. We'll take both of those bands off there. We'll move them back a peg. We'll take the bottom 2 bands, pull them out, up and over to the center. And we'll do the same thing with this bottom left peg. The last one. We'll grab the 2 bands, take them off the peg, move them down a peg. So now we should have 4 bands. We'll take the bottom 2 bands, pull them out, up, and over to the center, and push all of that down. We are a lot smaller now. And it gets a little wobbly when it's on a counter. So this layer is going to be all white. Okay, so we'll do 1 band on each one, all white. So 6 bands total. And we'll do our standard looping. Now we're going to take 2 crochet hooks. We're going to go through one side with 1 crochet hook and the other side with the other crochet hook. When we go through, we're going to make it like we're kind of going in a circle. So we want to have one, if you're using crochet hooks, 1 hook direction one way and the other hook facing the other way. So go ahead and gather them up. We're going to take the crochet hook, go through both bands, pick it up almost like we're moving it, but we're going to keep that on the hook. I'll hold it back with my finger because sometimes it's a little bit easier to hold it back and maneuver into the next peg. Because then you want to go gather the next one on the same hook. Now you've got 2 gathered there. Go into the next one. Then this time when we've got 3 gathered, you can either continue around if you only have 1 or something like that, but I recommend grabbing another hook and continue gather. Well, I flipped, okay. We were going this way, we gathered all 3 of those. Now I am flipping my board in a 180 and I'm going to take my crochet hook again and I'm going to gather the same from the right side to the left side in that line. So grab that one, I'll go down the next peg, grab those 2 bands, go down the last peg, and grab those 2 bands. So now we can, for the moment, set our board aside, and we have a BB-8 head, and we have 3 sets of 2 bands on each side. Now what we want to do alright, so grab your stuffing. You can use cotton balls, you can use bands, you can use any number of things. I use snow fluff from our store. It's actually got the little twinkle lines and everything in it. You don't need a lot of stuffing, so start with a smaller amount and slowly keep stuffing to see how much stuffing you actually end up needing. If you flip him over as you're stuffing him, you can kind of see how he's looking, how round he's looking, how mushed he's looking. You can give him the proper stuffing shape. And he's kind of got more of a rounder sides. a shorter top to him. So I'm kind of making it so it's a little bit more of a rounder sides and shorter top. Hopefully it's kind of looking like that. Just smush the top a bit there. Kind of giving that a look to it. Yeah, it's kind of looking like that. Alright, so once you get him to where you would like him to look, we're going to continue with the closing up of this. So now we will need those 2 bands again. We'll put them on our finger. We'll take our hook. We'll go through the 2 bands. We'll want to pull those bands through the rest of these bands. Now if you're using a crochet hook, like this one's especially the bigger size crochet hook, I'll twist so that the hook side is face down and pull these bands so you kinda see that little triangle space right here. And you want to slide that hook right through that. And if you slide it through, you face the right way, you'll actually get all of them on there nicely. Then you take that band that you just slid through and you place it right on the tip of the next band or the next crochet hook, because we're going to do the same thing there. Then I'll take the first crochet hook and just slip it through the end here. I know it's really loose so it can fall out easily, but just keep an eye on it because this is going to help it so this end of the bands doesn't pull through as you're pulling all of them through. So now we're going to turn it back around. And same concept over here. This is the end band that we were holding before, the 2 on the closest to the end. And we're going to pull those 2 through all the rest of those bands. So go ahead and twist it and maneuver it. Sometimes if people can't quite pull it through, the other thing you can do, let me see if I can get this up close enough and I'll show you with another hook so my fingers aren't in the way, hopefully. Alright, where am I at? There we go. So, down more. I'll get there. Give me a minute. Alright, how's that look? Alright, so here's the 2 end bands that we just pulled through all of those bands, and those 2 need to get through all the rest of these bands. So if you're having trouble pulling it through like I did a minute ago, you can also go like this and just grab carefully your next set of bands and pull it over the end and down. And just slide that back a bit, go through, grab your, it's a little harder to do on camera, so I do apologize for this, but trying to make it easier for you guys. Grab your next set of bands here and just manually move them on over. And we've only got 1 more set of bands here, so then you'd grab your last set of bands, pull them on over. At this point, we've got 2 bands here, we've got 2 bands here. That's the same 2 bands going all the way through, or it should be. If it's not, you possibly did something wrong somewhere. So they should be the same 2 bands going all the way through. That's a good sign if they are. Now we'll just do a simple little slip knot with it. I know it's a little weird doing it from 2 hooks instead of on a board. Let's see, figure out a good way to do this. You want to slide the bands nearer to the ends of your hooks here. And then I'm going to take the bands from one of the hooks and move it onto the other hook there. So now we've got 2 sets of bands and 2 sets of bands. And like I was doing a minute ago, we just want to take that back set of 2 bands and lift it off, up, and over the front set of the 2 bands. And then pull that nice and tight. Now don't pull it so tight that it breaks, because it is holding your creation together right now. But pull it tight enough that it'll work. Right. So the next thing we need to do is, if you look at him, he kind of has this weird point here. And the top of his head is still a little taller than it should be. So we're going to solve that all in one. And it's going to actually give you the option to have a hanging hook too for him. So you can hang him. Or you can set him on the little stand that I'll show you how to make too. So take 2 more bands. And take the 2 bands at the top of him. put your hook through the 2 bands at the top. Through those 2 bands, we're going to slip knot. So we're going to pull the 2 bands through the 2 hanging bands. We're going to reclaim on our hook there. Take the back 2 bands, pull it out up and over the front 2 bands, and pull it nice and tight. When I pull it tight, you'll see me pull right here. What I'm doing is I'm holding the knot so it doesn't pull the bands below it, because I don't want to pull those bands anymore. I just want to pull the knot. So I'll hold the actual knot and pull the rest of the bands. And that helps me feel when the knot gets nice and tight to not pull anymore, because it's already as tight as it's going to get. So that's a interesting way to possibly feel your bands there. At this point, I recommend using a crochet hook. If you don't have one, I guess go ahead and use the rainbow loom hook. That'll work. A metal hook is really what you're looking for if you can. If you have a plastic rainbow loom hook, be very careful that it doesn't break at this point. What you're wanting to do is you actually want to go through the top of the head here. So kind of like X marks the spot. So you want to go through the top of the head, and if you just wiggle back and forth enough as you're going through, it'll kind of push away that cotton balls or bands or whatever you've got snow fluff in the middle. And you want to keep doing that, just wiggling it back and forth and moving it aside until you get all the way to the other side. This is actually a thinner hook. I think I want to use the thicker one for that. I'm using a size F hook now. So that's a little bit of a thicker hook. The E is really good, but it does have a tendency to bend if you're trying to do harsh things with it. So just keep doing this until you get all the way through the other end of the head here. Yay, I'm through. Depending what you end up using, sometimes it can take some time to get through. Just attempt to have some patience and persistence, and eventually you will make it through. Otherwise, you can always just try and tuck this in and tuck it around, and instead your BB-8 head will be a little bit rounder than it should be, and a little bit of a different connection piece here than what I'm going to show you. So, I mean, it will eventually get to the same outcome. It's just going to look a little more on the rounded side that he looks if you go through it. So, if you can manage to get through it and do this part, awesome, and all the better for you. If you can't, that is fine too. Give it your all, give it your best shot. So, once you make it through, you'll want to put both of your little ties that were at the top here, the extra little bands that we added, onto the end here. Now, I find it's really helpful to grip the side of the rubber band here to make the tension on it so that it really gets pulled through easily. You don't want to, I know it's hard to say, but you don't want to try and catch the fluff as you're going back through. So try to go back through the same hole that you made it through the first time. Doing slight turns if you need to. As soon as you get to the other side, you might have some fluff sticking along with you. So just go ahead and pull that off before it goes up with it too much. And stick that back in. Then go ahead and keep pulling. And what you want to do when you're pulling is you want to push the bottom of the head in. That's going to give it that more roundish, flattish look. And pull through the top. Now, another awesome thing with having that extra little knot band up here is it kind of tells you where to stop pulling at the top, because at this point, this is your hanging piece as well for the top of your head. And if you pull it just right, it's It's going to give you more of that rounded top of the head. It's going to give it more of that flat bottom look. You can actually sit flat right now. And that's what we want to do for the concept of putting it onto a BB-8 body. So we want that flatness there. So again, if you can get to that point, it's going to be all the better, and it's going to make it look a little more realistic. So this is what we've got now. If you don't want to hang your BB-8 and you want to have the BB-8 like the little antennas and no hanging thing at the top, we'll tuck it in later on at the end. For now, we do want to keep it up because as we do the attaching to the body and other pieces, it might actually prove useful to be able to pull on it and reshape the bottom part and things like that. So right now we are almost done. We just need to add the antennas. And there's a small antenna and a large antenna. So we can set our BB-8 head to the side for the moment. For the small antenna, we want one black band and one white band. And then for the large antenna, we want one black band and 3 white bands. Now, you guys saw how I did on the latch hook earlier. It's a little simpler and everything, so I'm going to do it on the latch hook right now. You know what you're doing. So go ahead and grab the black band. And we'll start with the small one. We're going to loop it around 4 times to create 5 bands on the little hook. So the act of putting it on is 1. Pull out, twist, loop is 2. You can see there's 2 bands on it now. Pull out, twist, loop 3. Pull out, twist, loop 4. And pull out, twist, loop 5. So if you go to count, you should be able to count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's 5 bands on there. If you can't get to a 5X, because it is going to be a little bit trickier to get 5 bands looped onto the white band, especially since the white band's going to be doubled, yeah, go ahead and do a couple less if you need to. It doesn't need to be 5, but I just saw that, you know, with the different antenna tops, that it actually works better like this. Take your single white band, and you're going to pull it out. You're going to put a twist in it, put it back on your fingers to make it doubled. We'll put that on the end of the hook, and we will slide our cap band, our 5X band, onto that white band. And then we'll reclaim onto the hook there. So we've got 2 white bands and 2 white bands. And we're actually going to make them a slip knot. So we'll take the back 2 white bands and we'll slip them out, up, and over the front 2 white bands. So technically, if you're using a latch hook like me, you want to have one set of white bands on one side of the latch and the other set on the other side. So you can see as it's closing here. So I've got one on this side and one on this side. And just pull it through. Otherwise, if you don't have a latch hook, again, you're just lifting the back 2 bands and lifting it up over the front 2 bands. So now we have a slip knot going through that. And we're going to want to attach that to our BB-8. This hook is actually more of a hook, so I don't want that hook at this point. I think I'll go 2 hook grades less. Alright, so we're going to put this on a hook here. And we're going to take a hook that doesn't have it on there. I'm just doing that to hold it for the moment. We're going to find the 2 black dots. We're going to go the opposite side of the head. We're going to go probably right around where this gray and white back section is. That's probably going to be about one of them, and then over to the right around there is probably going to be about your other. It's a rough estimate, so do your best. You're going to take the non-hooked one, and you're going to grab 2 bands. I think I'm going to go for 2 white bands, maybe. No. I'll do a white and a gray band. That's going to get moved back a little bit further there. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good spot. Again, don't let these get lost. So if you are starting to maneuver your head around and it's getting all funky, and then you look down, the next thing you know, your 2 little pull bands are kind of disappearing, stop everything, re-pull, get them back to the top and safe, and then continue back to what you're doing. Because you don't want those to get lost in the middle of him, because it's a little hard to get that through. So we're going and we're grabbing a white and a gray band back here. I've got the white and the gray band. Then we're going to take our slip knotted band here. We're going to pull those 2 bands through the 2 bands that we've got on the top of the head. We're going to open it up and loop it back around itself. So what that means, I'll actually just take it off of that so you guys can see it a little bit better. Hopefully this will help you see it better. Let me get back in view. Sorry, up is down, down is up, all of that weird stuff. Alright, so here you can see that this is the little antenna, and hopefully you can see the little double loop at the bottom. So now that I am through the 2 loops on the head, I'm going to grab the 2 loops here. Those are just the little ties. And there we go. So I'm going to pull those 2 loops through the 2 loops on the head. And then this is what I was talking about. I'm going to open up the 2 loops that are on the crochet hook. I don't know if this will be easier to see or not. And I'm going to take and, not lose them. I'm going to, here we go. Is that easier to see? I'm going to, trying to look at the camera too and do this. Alright, so I'm going to put the little antenna through that slip knotted band. And give a little bit of a pull. You don't want to pull too much because you don't want it to be totally slip knotted in there and strangly, but you want to just give it a little bit of a pull so that it stays nice and secure there. So now we've got 1 antenna added to him. So again, what I did is I just took that double bands from the antenna, pulled it through the 2 bands on the head, and looped it back around the antenna. That's all that we did there. So that's 1 antenna. We're going to do a similar idea on the other antenna here. This is going to be the taller antenna. So we'll take the 1 black band, and we'll loop it 3 times. Okay, so we'll take the 1 black band, we'll take the hook, we'll loop it, there's 1, out, twist, there's 2, out, twist, and there's 3. So there's 1, 2, and 3 bands on your hook. Slide it back past your latch. You'll take one of the white bands, double it, so pull it out, twist it around, double it. Slide your black bands onto your white band and reclaim the white band onto the hook. So now this makes for a little bit of a bigger antenna since it's looped less on the very top. And take your next white band, pull it out, double it, put it back on your hook, pull the next 2 white bands onto those and reclaim back onto your hook. And one more time. Take the white band, pull it out, double it, put it on your hook, pull the white band set from your hook onto the 2 white bands, reclaim onto your hook, and now you have a little bit of a longer antenna. Same thing as we did before. We're going to take those last 2 sets of bands, we're going to pull the back 2 bands out up and over the first set of the 2 bands to slip knot them together. If you're using a latch hook, you'll want one set of 2 bands on one side of the latch, the other set on the other side. Because as we pull it out and over, it's going to slip knot itself right there. And then same thing as we did a minute ago as well. We're going to grab our head again, and remember, those may not exist if we don't want them to hang later. So we'll just pull those off on the side. This is what it's looking like. The other one should go probably right about here, if you can see. So that's going to be off to the right where this little white and gray in section is. I'm going to use 2 white bands this time. So I'll put my hook through the 2 white bands. Just so you guys might be able to see better. Well, if you guys are using hooks too, you can take it like that. And again, you're going through the little triangle with your new hook and slipping it off. So now we've got only 2 bands on the BB-8 head. We've got our crochet hook, and we've got the new piece on the end of the crochet hook there. We're going to pull the 2 bands through the 2 bands on the head. We're going to open those up and loop it back around the little antenna piece, and it's going to create the same effect as we did a minute ago on the other antenna. So go ahead and hold those. Pull those through, open them up, and loop the antenna back through them. Let go. Give a little pull where needed. Twist, adjust, maneuver, finagle. They might not end up being the perfect direction, but at least it gives it the 2 little antennas. And see, after all that moving again, now my little pieces are getting a little further down there, the hanging pieces. So we just want to pull those up as we push in at the bottom. Now they're back to position. Now we have what looks like a hopeful BB-8 head for you guys. And we are ready to move on to the BB-8 body next. Yay! Earlier I mentioned how it's important to have the board in a certain direction and all of that. Well, this is the point where it's actually important now. So make sure that you are looking at little C's on both rows. And whenever I'm going to say the bands that we put down, make sure you're counting from the bottom left going around to the right. So just keep that in mind. Starting is also crucial too. We're going to start with the white band, and we're going to go and count from the bottom left and from the top right. We're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 pegs. So 6 pegs in from both directions, and we're going to put that white band diagonally across to those 2. So we're skipping the 2 middle ones. And when we do that, we're actually going to want it doubled. So pull out your white band, stretch it out, put a twist in it, double it, and we're going to go across that middle point. And put a twist in the white band as you're going across in the middle. It's going to be a little tight with it being doubled, but there we go. And then to double check that you did it right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going across 6 to 6, twist in the middle, doubled. The gray band, we're also going to double that. So pull that out, double it in your fingers, and put it across the center, and put a twist in that one as well as you go across the center. Get in camera, there we go. So that's what you guys should be having on your boards right now. It's the only time we're going to be doing the double loop in there. Alright, so push those down, and we are on to layer 2. Layer 2 is 2 white bands and 2 gray, well, 2 gray bands, 2 white bands. So back to the C's, starting on the bottom, there's a gray and a gray going diagonally. And then at the top we've got a white and a white going diagonally. Same thing as we've been doing all along. Since we've got our two layers again, we're going to take the bottom layer and loop it out, up, and over to the center. That's the layer that we've got the double band on right now. So be careful when you take it out. It's going to have a little more tension than we're used to. So go ahead and loop that to the center. Do the next one. Bottom two bands to the center. Next one. And last one. Then push that down. Now we're going to expand 2. So we're going to expand the top left and the bottom right, and we're going to be back to a rectangle. That's the top band on the top left one. And it's going to be the top band on the bottom right one. And then we're going to do 3 gray and 3 white. We'll start with gray. It's going to be on the bottom left one, so gray, gray, and gray. And then we'll do the other side. We'll do gray, or white. I know my colors, really, I do. It's going to be white, white, white. So 3 grays, 3 whites. Same thing, grab the bottom 2 bands, loop them out, up, and over. Make sure not to knock off the top one. On the bottom 2, that's going to be a single band there. And then on the top 2 here, there are going to be single bands as well that you're looping. Now we want 4 gray. And 4 white. Four gray, 4 white. Now we'll need to expand. And we want to expand 2. So we're going to take the bottom left and the top right. And the bottom left is the top one that we can pick up and move, and it's going to be the white band. And then the top right is going to be the gray band underneath. So we need to temporarily move the white band off of that peg. I'm going to move it to the peg across from it. Then grab the gray band, move that down a peg, go back and grab that white band and move him back to that peg again. So now we have more of that diagonal look. At this point, we'll start at the bottom left, and we'll place a gray band, a gray band, a gray band, and a gray band going diagonally. And across the top we'll do a white band, a white band, a white band, and diagonally a white band. Same thing as we've been doing. We're going to grab the bottom bands and loop them over the top bands. When you turn it sideways, The two off to the right side are 2 bands, and the two off to the left side are single bands. So make sure you are grabbing the correct bands. And attempt to not knock off the top bands. And push them down. Onto layer 5. Layer 5, we've got some interesting color combinations going back and forth. So we will start with some grays and some whites. I'm not sure on the exact counts. I've got it labeled differently here. 12. So we're going to expand, and we're going to expand 2 to the right and 2 to the left. So we'll start with the bottom right one here. We'll grab the top band, we'll move it down a peg, and then we'll go to the top right one. We'll take the white band off because we want the second one down. We'll temporarily move it to another peg. We'll go back, we'll grab that bottom band, we'll move it down a peg, and to confirm, make sure it's the same band going across the center here. Go ahead and grab that white band and reposition it on the peg there. And we're going to do the same thing on the other end here. On the bottom left, it's going to be the white band that's on top. We'll grab that, move it. I'm overstretching, probably should have grabbed this one first, but it's only a couple seconds. Then we'll grab the top one from the top left. We'll move that up. Again, it should be the same band going through here. At this point, we'll start placing. Confirm that you are looking at little C's. And we'll start with 3 gray bands. Well, not 3, I mean singly. A gray band, a gray band, and a gray band 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. A white band. A gray band. A gray band. That's the diagonal band. A white band. I guess we actually have 2 black bands on this layer, so grab 2 black bands. So 1 black band, and then right after that is the other black band. And then we'll finish up the rest with white bands. A white band and a white band. If you've done everything correctly, you should have 12 bands placed. Go ahead and loop the bottom bands out, up, and over. When looping, it doesn't really matter where you begin as long as you loop them all. And push them down. We are on to layer 6. Alright, so we're going to expand 2 on this one. So that means 1 out on the bottom right and 1 out on the top left. So it's going to be back to the rectangle shape. The bottom right one is the top band that we'll need to expand out. And the top left one is also the top band that we will expand out there. Okay, remember looking at the C's. Starting at the bottom left, we have gray, gray. We start mixing in our oranges now. Orange, gray, 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 orange, white, black, orange, white, 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 and orange. So that one was a little more to the bands there in the coloration. I'll see if I can bring it up and if that helps you to see what some of the colors are a little bit better. That's what we should have going on right now. And you should have a total of 14 bands going around the outer edge. If you have that and you're all satisfied that you match, then we can continue on and loop the bottom 2 bands out, up, and over. The next layer is going to expand another 2 pegs, so we're going to expand the top right and the bottom left. Make sure you're looking at C's. And it's going to be 16 bands, and it's going to be a layer of all orange. And to expand the top right, we do need to get to the second band down there, so we'll temporarily move that top band. Grab the lower band, move it down a peg, go back, grab that top band, replace him, and then go to the top or the bottom left and grab the top band, the orange band, and move him over. So we have an orange band on each end, and we just extended the orange band on each end. So if your colors line up, then we're doing good. Alright. So now we'll just put 1 orange band going all the way around the outer edge. Okay. You should have 16 orange bands going around the outer edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then 8 on the reverse symmetrical side. So go ahead and loop your bottom bands out, up, and over. And again, the extending ones will only have a single band on them. So wherever we made the extensions this time. These 2 on the top right. Push them down. Our next layer we're going to start with expanding 2. It's going to be the bottom right and the top left. We're going to be back to the rectangle shape, and this layer is actually going to be an all white layer. So grab the top band from the bottom right one, move it down a peg, and grab the top band from the top left one and move it up a peg, or to the left a peg. And then let's place white bands going all around the entire thing. It'll be 18 white bands. Okay. We've got 18 white bands. Loop the bottom bands. Layer 9, we're going to expand again, and we're going to expand the top right and the bottom left, and then this layer will be all white. When we go to expand the top right one, we need the second one down, so we'll temporarily move the top one, grab the second one down and expand. Move the top one back, and then the bottom left, we can grab the top band and move it down, or to the left of it. Alright, white all the way around. You may see me picking up several bands at a time. Again, when I place, I am placing only one band between each of these pegs. This layer should have 20 bands going around the outer edge. If you do have that, then go ahead and loop your bottom layer. Layer 10, we're going to be mixing colors. It's going to be white and orange for this layer. We are also back to a rectangle shape, so we'll want to expand the bottom right and the top left. Bottom right is going to be the top band that we pick up and move down a peg. And the top left is going to be the top band that we pick up and move down a peg. Remember, double check by always making sure it is the same band that's going in between those two end pegs. Alright, so let's start with white. We're going to always start at the bottom left, and it's going to be white, white, orange, not right, orange, white, 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 orange, orange, white, and that should be the end one. And then we're starting on the upper side now. White, white, orange, orange, white, 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 orange, orange, and white finishes off on the left side, coming straight up and down. And that should be a total of 22 bands there. So make sure you have that. Let me go in for a closer view if I can do that. Not too much of a closer view, huh? So if this helps you see the colors at all. See where they're positioned, in case you didn't hear me say one. Hopefully that's helpful. Alright, So if you think you are set, then go ahead and loop the bottom 2 bands. All of them will be 2 bands, except again where we expanded at the left 2 and the bottom right 2. Layer 11, we'll need to expand again. It's going to be the top right one that we expand and the bottom left one that we expand. On the top right one, we'll need to temporarily move the top band, grab the bottom band, move it down a peg, replace the top band, oops, don't knock it off accidentally, and then go down to the bottom left one, grab the top band, make sure it's the top band, and move it down one. Almost to the midway point. Alright. This is going to be another pattern follower for you guys. We're going to have 24 bands at the end of it. And we will be using the colors white, orange, and gray. We'll start at the bottom left. And it'll be white, white, orange, gray, gray, orange, white, white, orange, gray, gray, orange. And that should be the diagonal one now. Let me double check I got this right. Lots of lines written, lots of letters. Confusing on my page. Alright, so we are correct. So now we're starting at the top right and working our way back this way. And this one's going to be white, white, orange, gray, gray, orange, white, white, orange, gray, gray, orange. And actually, I think it just worked out that this one actually happened to be a repeating pattern. I didn't intend it to necessarily be that way. Literally, I was just doing what the symbols look like in the different color encoding for them, so that's pretty cool. Alright, so if you are thinking you successfully have that, go ahead and loop the bottom 2 bands. Again, we should have 24 bands total going around the outer edge here. And the top, or the bottom 2 left ones and the top right 2 will just be one single band. Layer 12 is going to be a rectangle shape again. So we'll need to expand. This will be our last expansion. We'll expand the bottom right and the top left. So let's start with expanding the bottom right. It's going to be the orange band down there and the top orange band. And the top left is going to be the orange band again and the top band again. So some easy expansions there. Alright, at this point we should have every peg having a band. And we've got all colors, I think, in this mix. So let's add some blacks to our colors too. We've got some oranges, some grays, and some whites. Alright. White. Alright, so starting at the bottom left, we're going to start with white, orange, white, gray, black, white, orange, orange, white, gray, gray, white, and orange. With that, you should have the bottom row and the side done. Now we'll start going across the top, and it's going to be starting on the top right, and we're going to be white, orange, white, black, black, let's see, white, orange, orange, gray, white, gray, white, and orange vertically across the end. And that should make the complete circle there. So that helps you to see the colors a bit more. Alright. So if you've got one on everything, and you've got 26 bands going around the outer edge, and you think you're all set to go, you can start looping. The top left two are going to have one band, and the bottom right two are going to have one band. Everything else should have 2 bands. Go ahead and start looping. On to layer 13. It's going to be another round of 26, so no adjustments needed there. We will be using, I think, all of the colors again, so stock up on those a little bit. Alright, so starting at the bottom left, it's going to be white, orange, white, gray, black, white, orange, orange, white, gray, gray, white, and orange, and that takes us down to the vertical one on the right side. And starting at the top right, going across the top, it's going to be white, orange, white, black, black, white, orange, orange, white, gray, gray, white, and orange. And that will finish the left side here. So we've got an orange on both of the two ends. That was 26 bands all the way around the outer edge. Everything should have 2 bands, so make sure you have that and go ahead and loop. I was in a room that had a little more light earlier when I began recording, but it's starting to get a little more later in the afternoon and it's getting darker. So I might have to turn some more lights on, so sorry if all of a sudden different shadows start appearing. So let me try that, especially since I need to get some more white too, because that's my last white. So hold on a sec, guys. Okay, so hopefully that made it a little bit brighter for you guys. I think I see some shadows up here in the camera, a bit more that didn't exist, but looks a little brighter. So, alright, next layer is going to be layer 14. And looks like we'll need some black. We'll need some orange. Need some gray, and we'll need some white. Alright. Also, on this layer, we're only placing 24 bands, so that means we're starting to condense. So we will condense the bottom left and the top right. Now it's the same as on the head. When we go to condense, we're going to see if I can get it up higher to you guys. Alright, we're going to take the both bands off the peg, and we're going to put both bands on the peg below it, or next to it. And then at this point, we've got 2 bands on the top that we just put on and 2 bands on the bottom. We're going to take the 2 bands from the bottom and loop them out, up, and over. So that's one condense. Now we're going to do the same on the other side, top right. Going to take 2 bands, move them over, grab the lower 2 bands, and flip them over. Other direction, that way. So now let's place 24 bands going around. We're going to still start this bottom left corner, and this will be white, and then orange, black, black, orange, white, white, orange, gray, gray, orange, and white. And white should be your diagonal one at the very end. And now we're going to go across the top and diagonal again. So starting at the top right, we've got white, orange, gray, gray, orange, white, white, orange, gray, gray, orange, and white. White's going to be our diagonal on both ends, actually. So, if you feel confident that you have placed all of those correctly, then go ahead and loop those out, up, and over. Now we're on to layer 15. We're back to a rectangle. So we want to condense the bottom right and the top left. Soon I might have to be picking the board up anyway. Our little guy is starting to peek through the bottom there. Let's pick up both bands, move both bands in, grab the bottom two bands and loop them over. Same thing up here in the top corner and top left. Grab both bands, pick up both bands, move them down a peg, loop the bottom two bands over and to the center. So now we are a little more condensed. It's starting to wobble. Alright. We'll need, starting in the bottom left again, as usual, white, white, orange, orange, white, 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 orange, orange, white. That should take us to the vertical one on the end there. And then going across the top and down, starting at the top right, we'll have white, white, orange, orange, white, 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 orange, orange, and white going down the left side. That should be 22 bands going around the outer edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 11 doubled is 22. Alright, let's loop if you feel that you've got that all correct. All the bands on the bottom are 2 bands. Layer 16 is going to be a total of 20 bands, so we're going to condense. We're going to condense the bottom left and the top right. Again, make sure you're looking at little C's if you've been picking up and moving your board around. So grab the top 2 bands, move them down a peg, grab the bottom 2 bands, loop them out, up, and over. Top right. Grab the top 2 bands, move them to the left a peg, grab the bottom 2 bands, loop them over, and then all the rest of this layer is all white bands. Should have 20 bands going around the outer edge. Loop the bottom 2 bands out, up, and over. Okay, our next layer, layer 17. It's going to be 18 bands around, which means we need to condense again. Going to condense the top left and the bottom right. Again, you're looking at little C's. So this time I'm going to just lift it up because it's starting to rock when I sit it down. So grab both bands, move it back 1, grab the bottom band, loop it over. Same thing on the left side, grab both bands, move it to the right 1, grab the 2 bands on the bottom, and loop it over. So now we're back to a rectangle shape. And this one is going to be all white bands again going around it. So go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to hold it for a minute. So. Okay, if you have 18 bands going around, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, doubled is 18. So if you have 18 bands, go ahead and loop the bottom 2 bands. Level 18 is going to be 16 bands, so we're going to want to condense before we start again. We're going to condense the top right and the bottom left. So grab the 2 bands off the top right, move it back 1, or to the left 1, grab the bottom 2 bands, loop them over, and then the bottom left. Grab the 2 bands, move it to the right 1, and then grab the bottom 2 bands and loop it over. Then this layer is going to be all orange bands. And $16 oranges on a diagonal. If you think you're set, go ahead and loop. Layer 19 is going to be 14 bands, so we're going to condense to a rectangle. That means this bottom right one. We're going to take the 2 bands off, move them to the left a peg, grab bottom 2 and loop them over. Same thing with the top left one, grab the 2 bands, move them to the right a peg, grab the bottom 2 bands, loop them over. Now we're back into a rectangle format. And this one we're going to be using white and orange bands. And we're going to start at the bottom left here. And we're going to do white, white, orange, white, 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 orange, that should take us to the end one, and then across the top, we're going to start white, white, orange, white, 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 orange. That should be 14 bands, and we've got oranges on the two ends again. Kind of cool. If you think you're good with that, then go ahead and loop the bottom two sets of bands. Layer 19 is only 10 bands, so that means we're going to condense the two pegs on the right, and we're going to condense the two pegs on the left. So we're going to move bottom two, both bands, over to the left peg, grab the bottom two bands and loop them over to the center. On the top right, we're going to grab both bands, move them to the left peg, grab the bottom two bands and loop them over. On the bottom left, grab the two bands, move them to the right a peg, grab the bottom two bands, loop them over to the center. And on the top left, grab the two bands, move them over a peg. Make sure you actually get them both moved over before you let go. Grab the bottom two bands and loop them over to the center. And then when we place, we should be placing 10 bands this time. We're going to start at the bottom left. We're going to go gray, gray, black, black, gray, gray, white, 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 gray. So that should be 10 bands going around. If you've got that, go ahead and loop. Now we're going to condense down to 6 bands. That's 2 on the right moving in and 2 on the left moving in. So start with the bottom right, grab 2 bands, move them to the left, grab the bottom bands. You should know the drill by now. Top right, bottom left, and top left. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to end this in a fashion and then stuff it and then connect it. So we'll take the bottom left 2 bands and we'll move them over a peg to the right. Now, instead of coming out up and over like we've been doing, we're actually going to go through the middle of this peg here. We're going to come out below it, grab the two bands, we're going to pull them through the center, around the peg there, and then we're going to take those and move them to the next peg and place them there. So it's actually going to be looping these together. We're going to do the same thing over here now. We've got the top bands and the bottom bands. We're going to go through the center of the peg. Keep your hook faced forward. Go through the center of the peg. Come out below the top two bands and above the bottom two bands. Grab the bottom two bands and pull them through the center around that peg, and they're going to go across to the bottom right peg. And we're going to do the same thing there and go through the center peg, grab the bottom two gray bands, pull them out and around the peg and up to the next peg. Going to do the same thing on this one. Go through the center, grab the two white bands, pull them up to the next one, and then we're going to grab the two bands from the bottom of that one. And those are the last two bands. We're just going to pull them off to a random unused peg to the left right there for now. So it almost makes kind of a star type of shape. At this point, we're going to add two white bands to that two bands that we moved to the side there. And that's going to be our slip knot bands, just so we have a little bit more of a tail to grip onto, because we don't want to let that band become unraveled, because that's what's going to hold everything together for the moment. Oh, so to slip knot, for those of you that don't know how to slip knot, let me rewind what I just did there. Alright, so we've got the two bands around that one peg, got that kind of triangle right there that's open. We're going to take our hook and go through that triangle so it gets the two bands right there on the hook. Then we're going to grab the two bands that we are holding. Sometimes it's easier to put one on your finger, or both on your finger. We're going to pull that through that little triangle. So you can see that triangle is now bending the two bands. And we're going to lose it. Alright, let me re-grab, pull it through the triangle there. And then we're going to take our hook and go through where the two bands are on our finger. So now we've got the two bands on the hook and the two bands on the hook going through the triangle. We're going to take the two bands on the hook and loop it over the two bands on the front. So there's the two bands that were on the hook, the back bands. We're going to let those go. And it's a slip knot right there. I'm going to hold when I make that slip knot so I can feel where it's being made at. Now, even at that, this still can at the moment become unraveled and come undone. So this isn't like totally holding it together like most designs would. We'll get to that point in a minute. So don't let it really come unraveled, but carefully take it off of the board, because we're going to need to stuff it before we go much further at this point. Actually, you know what? Why don't we, no, let's stuff it first, because we'll be stretching it. Yeah. Alright, so grab some of your stuffing material, and we're going to need to stuff our BB-8. At this point, if you're wearing rings, I do suggest to take them off just so that they don't get lost in your creation. I've had that happen before. So to stuff, just go ahead, roll your ball up, grab this. I sometimes will put a finger through the slip knot bands that we did, just so it kind of has more security too and don't have to worry about it as much. And then pull that open. Now if you pull it too much it will break bands, but pull it open enough that you can get some stuffing into it, and just go ahead and stuff in there. And keep pushing it down toward the bottom, making that nice and round there. When working with the BB-8 body, you do want to be rolling it around, you know, making it into a more perfect circle, mushing it where it needs to be. Now, if you're going to make the BB-8 stand, which is this round piece here for it, so he can end up sitting like that, you can keep the bottom round like that. If you don't want to do the stand, your other option is to design the bottom like this one that I've got here. Just ignore the head on it. This was a demo one and the head was a little too big for it. But the bottom came out kind of cool. And I designed this one so he could actually stand up on his own without having to have the base. I like the base better, and it's a nice little unit, especially since he is rounded on the bottom. But if you want to do it this way, this is an option too. So if you want it to be flat like this, what you want to do is you want to take the bands, take a couple extra bands, like 2, say, white or gray bands, and you just attach them right to the center here, and then you take your crochet hook like we did earlier with the head to go through to make it bunch through on the one side. You go with the crochet hook and you go from this side with the little 2 bands here through the body, come out at the end, you grab the 2 bands that you attach to the end, you slip knot them to the end, you pull that through the body, and then you attach it to the upper bands right here, and then you continue with the head like we're about to do anyway. So that's what you would have to do to get the bottom to be more of that flat bottom so he could actually stand up on his own. But if you want to make the stand with it and you like that version better, then that's what I'm going to be doing here with you, and that will have the rounded bottom. So it'll be mostly around his entire body there, except for where his head is. Now, if you want, you can close this up and just stitch this over here, and you could technically put the head wherever you want the head to be. You would use a similar method as how we're going to attach it, but I like the head being right here at the top, and I kind of designed it to be more in that spot, so that's where we're going to place the head right now in this tutorial. Move all of my BB-8s. So now we can put our rings back on, and we can go on to the next step. And the next step, if you have a latch hook, you can use that here. Otherwise, the normal rainbow loom will work here as well. And what we want to do is we want to take and feed this back through some of this outer edge here to help strengthen it, because this is where we're also going to be attaching the head. Now, if you take a look at it, you can kind of see how there's one section that has the weave going all the way around it, And then there's one section, it's kind of a little weaker going all the way down where we've been seaming it up. This is the direction you ideally want to go with it. So you're going to take your bands and you're going to be pulling them this way. And that's going to help to close up that area right there and strengthen that a little bit more. Now what that means is, let's see if I can zoom in any more here. Cool. Hopefully this looks nice and clear for you guys. Alright, and I just need to go the direction of the screen. Cool. So what we're trying to do is we're going to take our hook and we're going to see those two bands right there crossing that center band. And those two bands right here. We're going to want to take this band and bring it through those bands. We're going to keep going this path all the way around, weaving it in and out, so it's going to double layer as much as we can through the top. So start with going through those two bands. I'm going to grab the two slip knot bands. We're going to pull those through just like that. We're going to pull it nice and tight and squish up and close up the side as we do that, making a more rounded ball. Then we're going to go through the next set of two bands right there. So go ahead and go through those two. Grab the bands, pull them through. Same thing. And then here we start getting more into that weave pattern. So pretty much we can go through, back and forth through the weave. I'm going to go through the two bands right here. And then I'm going to go through the next two bands over on the side here. Plumb through those four bands. Now, it doesn't matter if you go through the same exact bands as me or not here, just as long as you basically get that one double set of bands woven around into the circle up here. As long as it weaves into that and strengthens that, that's what we're looking to have happen. So I'm going to go through the next set of bands. And just keep going through the different sets of bands like this, pulling in the circle that you need until you've gone through all of your extra space on your slip knot band. Then the last one you can kind of just let it sit there or do whatever. It's not too important. If you can get it tucked in, that's cool too, whatever. But it's gonna get covered up here in a minute. So that's what we want to have the top look like, nice and weaved together. And then we will add our BB-8 in a minute here, but we need to do some work with him too. We'll want to grab the BB-8 head, and we'll want to grab 4 bands here. And what we're going to do is, if you look at the bottom, this is the flat side of the head where we've pulled everything through to the other side. So we're on the bottom side of the head. You can kind of see where there's the different segments around here. And you can see that this one's a little bit lower and more sunken down than these. Probably this one's a little more sunken down too. So you want your most prominent 4. And you kind of want to make like a little diamond or a little square or something like that. So I'm going to be using these 4. We're going to slip knot a band onto each of them. So take the 2 of them and grab them onto your hook like that. I'm going to grab one of the white bands. Gonna take that, pull the band through, come back through, pull the band through, and slip knot it on. That's one done. And we're going to do that to the next one, the 4 that we picked out. So go through the 2 bands, grab the single band, come back through, slip knot it on. Alright, so if you've gotten those bands or close to the proximity of those bands, or if you want it more in the center, they will tend to slip out a little bit because that's the smooth part there anyway. But get it roughly so that there's 4 sides to it, because that's how we'll end up putting it onto the top here. So it'll end up going like that. You can figure out which way you want the body to face with the top of the head. It's a little more wider, I guess, a touch. Mine is at one side. It just means I need to squish it more. So figure out which side you like best for the top of the head to be. Since I have the possibility of my 2 bands sticking out back here, if they come undone in their weave a little bit, I mean, I'm going to tuck them back in, but, you know, if they come out or something like that, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tuck them all the way inside. That will hide them even more. Cool. But now I know they're back here, so I'm going to make the front of his head on the other side. So I want him looking more like this, I think. How's that? Yeah. So once you've figured out which direction you want to have the head looking, you're going to start with attaching it. And we're going to go with that little circle on the top that we wove everything through a minute ago. We're just going to go underneath a little section of it. We're going to position our head to where we want. We're going to pull one of those slip knotted bands through that section and out the back. Now I want to make sure that we're getting it close enough to the back and close enough to the sides and everywhere like that, that when he sits, he's going to sit evenly. Now that one I did a little too close to the center, so I'm just going to pull that out and start again. Okay, so I want it right about there. So I'm not going to go right to the very edge, but I am going to do one in the back here. So there's one. And then I need to do a slip knot off to the side, so pull through one of these. So I'm going to go through one of those side bands. Grab that and just pull that through for the time being. So now I've got one pulled through on the side here and one pulled through on the back right there. And you can see even when I let go, he kind of semi-stays together for the moment. Now I'm going to let his own self position to over on the side. Looks like it's going to be. Let's go through 2 bands over here. Just don't go through the orange bands because those are the outer edge and they kind of become noticeable if you end up going through those bands. So there's another band off on the side. And then, actually, I think I'm going to put that one in a different position. And if you want to undo one, like I'm about to, you just go pull out and you've got it again and you can position it in a different spot. Go position it more further back on that ring. Pull that through. lose it. And I've got one more to connect here. I'll connect that one over here. And have him go through the center. And I lost it going through, so I'll try again. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you will lose them a little bit. You just gotta pull it back out and start again. Eventually you will get it through just like that. So after you've got them all through to your liking, I think I want that one going the other direction. Yeah. I'm going to reposition this one because I'm having them go from the center to the outer direction. So that means he needs to pull through in the center, and I have this one pulling through to the center. So I'm going to go through the center where I want it to pull through. Gonna grab it and put it on the hook over here. I'm going to pull it back through. So now I've got it pulling out on the side. I almost just lost it there. Alright. I've got it pulling out over here. Got it pulling out over here. I've got it pulling out over here. And pulling out over here. Actually going to reposition this front one, I think. Oh, he's actually in there pretty well. Alright. So, let's say we've got them where we want them now. What you want to do is you want to feed one through the next one. So, I usually look at the one that's the least amount sticking out because I don't want to lose that one, and that's going to be this one over here. So I'm going to take it on my hook, then I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to put the next one on my hook, and I'm going to pull that one that I just put on the hook through the first one, and he's the new one on the hook. Then I'm going to pull that around to the next one, push that first one back further on my hook, grab the new one, pull that one through the one on my hook, and he becomes the new one. Gonna go around some more. Gonna push that back further on my hook, grab the fourth little band back here, pull that through the one on the hook, go around again. At this point, you have two options. You can either go back through the first one that we just did, so it'd be like this, and use this loop to pull it around the head if you think it's too loose. Otherwise, if you think it's just about the right tightness, you can just take this last loop that we made, and we can open this up, and we can loop that around his head. And that will keep the head on. So now the head is connected to the little BB-8. You can smush them down and together a little bit better. And at this point, if you want, you can hang your BB-8. Let me zoom out a bit since you don't need to see that close anymore. Alright, so at this point, if you want, you can hang your BB-8. You can make a cool little charm or something somewhere. Otherwise, if you don't want him hanging, all you need to do is just go under a couple bands here, grab it, pull it down, go under a couple bands here, and just keep tucking it in like that until it's disappeared, and then you don't have to worry about there being a weird little set of hanging bands off the top of his head. This will help give him the actual BB-8 look. It's a little more hidden there. And to proceed on, we have the different little stands that we can do for him. This is one example of the stand here, and that'll make it so that he can stand up. When you do the stand, you can either do the black bottom base like I've got here, which does look pretty nice as a base stand, or you can do a gray bottom base, which if you know the little BB-8 toy that's out, it runs with your phone, and it's a little robot BB-8, and it's so awesome and cute, and I love him, and I really want him, but I don't have the money for him. But yeah, that little guy, if you're looking at his stand, the bottom layer of his stand is actually gray. So right now, I'm going to show you guys how to make the gray stand. So if you want to make that, stick around for a second. It'll only take a quick second. If you don't, well, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy your little BB-8, and I hope he brings you fun times. So like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll hopefully have some cool stuff coming out in the future. And yeah, thanks for watching. And to continue on, if you guys want to make the little stand, we'll do that now. This is going to be 2 bands that we're going to be using at a time. We'll start with the gray bands, and we'll actually keep the board in the same exact format that it's been this whole time. We'll start with 2 gray bands on the top left, or I guess if we go back to our normal format, thinking of it this way, I've just always built it the other direction. Will be 2 gray bands all along the bottom row starting at the left side. So go ahead and make that. Just a single row, 2 bands. And for the top row, we're going to do 2 orange bands going all the way down. So take 2 orange bands at a time. So now we'll do the center. To do the center, we want to start with a black band. So whether you're using the black bottom or the gray bottom, we'll still do the centers the same way on both of them. And we'll start with 1 black band, and we'll take our hook. This is great for the latch hook right here, but we'll wrap it around the hook so that there's 4 loops on the hook. So wrap it 3 times. So 4 loops. This is 1 loop, 2 loops, 3 loops, and 4 loops. So I call that 4x. We're going to slide that onto 1 white band. And then we're going to take that, and we want to be looking at the board like the C's, like we've been all along, and we're going to put 1/2 of the white band on the top, and we're going to put the other half of the white band on the bottom. I'm going to do that same thing, but with a white band now in the center next. So take a white band, loop it 1, 2, 3, and 4. Take a white band and slide it through that. And then place that one on the next one. This is a great one for the latch hook as well, as I was saying. Open the latch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slide it back past the latch. Slide the latch closed. And put your bands on. So go ahead and continue this. We're going to do 1 black 5 white, then 1 black again. The cool thing about this pattern is the same thing I do in my Easter egg and Easter egg stand video as well, just this one we add the grass to it. So if you're looking for a cool stand for your Easter egg, check out that video. But in this one, as well as in making just a bracelet, which is how this is going to end up turning out, sort of like this. This one and the grass stand, this little single white band here in the center is actually a doubled band. That holds it together a lot tighter to be able to do that. Versus if you look at the BB-8 stand, the actual stand itself, there's more white. There's the orange on the top, then there's more white protruding out on the sides, and then there's the gray base. So that's why we're only doing 1 band here in the center, because you're going to mush it down, and it's going to allow it to look like actually more of a protruding base than a straight edge. Because this one, it's hidden right there in the center. It's a little harder to see. And the grass stand is totally hidden in the center by the grass. But a couple different variations on this and what you can do with it. So hopefully you guys like that. But at this point, we should have the board set. We're starting with a black dot, then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white dots, a black dot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white dots, and a black dot at the end. We'll also want to push the bottom 2 bands down because we want to do a cap band down here at the end. And we're only going to do a 3x cap because we're going to join it later on. So 1, 2, and 3 loops around. And gray one on the gray side, orange one on the orange side. So 1, 2, and 3 for the cap on that. And then go ahead and weave. Oh, this is standard weaving. We haven't done that yet. Alright, so on the weaving, you just want to go underneath the cap band. You want to go underneath the horizontal white band. Grab the 2 gray bands. Pull them out. Sometimes you'll need to hold down with your thumb so the cap doesn't come off. And then pull those 2 gray bands up to the next peg. At this point, you'll see that white horizontal band. Pull that back when you're looking down from the top. Pull that white horizontal band back. Go down, grab the bottom 2 bands, and pull them out and up to the next peg. Keep doing that all the way up and do the other side the same. Don't forget to pull back that horizontal band as you go. And just weave that up to the top, and then I'll show you how to connect it to the next section, because this is not going to make it long enough to be able to make a stand on its own. This is about half the stand. Now that you have weaved it all up, we'll need 2 holding sticks. You can either use the crochet hooks or you can use the holding sticks that I talked about earlier. If you use those, you can see which ends are your tops and your bottoms a little easier. Oh yes, you could end the crochet too. Either way. So you'll take your holding stick, whatever you're using. You'll go through the little peg hole at the very end, where you've weaved everything up to. And you'll pull it back and stick it off to the side so that we make sure that the bands are nicely on there. At this point, you should have 2 gray bands, a white band, and 2 gray bands, all on your stick. that means you've got all the bands on there. So do that the same on the other side. Just over there you'll have 2 orange bands, a white band, and 2 orange bands. So at this point you can go ahead and take it off of the board. You can either take it off if you don't feel comfortable any other way, you know, slowly taking off one peg at a time, back and forth. This way is the safest. You are going to break a lot less bands taking it off like this. If you have a crochet hook, you can also go in the little peg hole and just bend back, and that helps to take it off using the non-hook end because it makes it a little easier and it doesn't catch the bands as much when you're taking it off. Otherwise, if you want, you can, since it's not too bad, grab in the center and kind of pull back and up, and just make sure none of the little white bands get left behind on the pegs and overstretched out. But you can take it off like that as well, all the way to the top. And then for the top one, just lightly lift the bands onto your holding stick. And then this will set over on the side. And we'll rebuild the board the same exact way we just did. So we'll start on the left side with the 2 gray bands. Move that out there. So 2 gray bands all the way down. We'll start on the top with the orange bands, 2 orange bands connected all the way down. Then we'll do the across like we did. Remember, we started with the black, and then we did 5 white, and then black, 5 white, and do that all the way down. Wait at that point, and I'll show you guys how to connect your first section. Now, when you go to do this side of it, you actually don't need that extra one at the bottom here. We have the first black dot, and then we've got 5 white dots, a black dot, 5 white dots, and then this black dot at the top of this one here that we made first is actually going to be the black dot for right there. So we'll grab our first piece right now before we do any weaving, and we're going to connect it. So what we want to do is we want to match up the sides so that the gray is on the side with the gray, the orange is on the side with the orange. If you have hooks like this or sticks, I said the top had the little balls on it, so I know that if I have the little balls on the top of the stick, you know, facing up, that's going to be my top as well. So if you have something like that, that works too. Some people will put the pegs right into the center and work it down. I prefer to move them my first half down to the edge here. And then let's see if I can zoom in again, eh? Alright, let's see how that works. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I've got my 5 bands here on the holding stick. I'm just going to pull these out. I'm going to slip them onto that bottom left peg. You want to make sure that you got them all on the peg before you take the peg or the holding stick off. One way to do that is if you pull out and away, you can see straight down there that all the bands are on the holding stick and on the peg. If you see one that's not, then obviously readjust it before taking it out. Otherwise, if you are all set, go ahead and slide that holding stick out. We'll do the same thing on the other side here too. If that is too much to slide them all at the same time, another way you can do it, takes a little more time and patience, but it'll get you there safely in the end. So you'll take the holding stick with the bands, just take a normal rainbow loom hook, grab 1 or 2 bands and just move them right from the holding stick onto the peg. Go back, grab the next band or 2, and take that off of the holding stick onto the peg. And then go back and grab the last 2 bands and put that onto the peg. So either way, whichever is easier or safer or whichever for you guys. It's a couple methods to do that. Sometimes to get started you might need to pull down a little bit so that you can actually see through there a little bit better, and at this point you can go through, and what you're trying to do is you're going through everything that you just attached, basically. You're grabbing the bottom 2 bands and pulling that through the center and up to the next peg. And then, you know, just normal weaving all the rest of the way up. Same thing on the other side. So go ahead and do that. I'll see you back here for finishing touches. Don't take it off the board. We'll re-meet right there. Yeah. Okay, so after you've weaved it up, do the same thing. Put your holding sticks in. You can use the same ones you just used a minute ago. Go ahead and take it off the board. Now, you have a couple options at this point. You can either use some C-clips, like you do with normal bracelets, and just C-clip this together, and then you've got your BB-8 stand, you know, pucker it out at the center, and squish it all around, and you're all set. Otherwise, if you want to do it my way, I just like to add a little different touch on the end. You don't have to do it by any means. I try to stay away from C-clips the most of the time. So what mine is going to do is I'm going to seam it together here, and it's just going to seam with normal rubber bands. So if you want to seam it together with just normal rubber bands, make it look like an extension cord plug-in spot or something like that, this is what it'll end up looking like. This will do the little bit of the white on the top. I'm not sure if it does that. I don't think it does that. If you don't do that, if you use C-clips, it might be all orange up there. There's a way to get around that too anyway. So you can do that, or you can do it this way, or you can do it whatever way. If you're going to do it my way, I'm going to go ahead and take just one layer, one row of your rainbow loom here. Let's actually do the... Is it the top? Alright, so let's do the top 2 bands being orange. And then let's do the bottom 2 bands being gray. So we've got 2 orange bands and 2 gray bands. Okay, actually we're going to reverse that. We're going to put the 2 gray bands on the top first. And then we're going to put the 2 orange bands on. Yeah. So it's going to look like that now. So we've got 2 gray bands and 2 orange bands. So now we'll take And we'll have our top of our sticks. And we've got our 2 gray bands on top, and we've got our 2 orange bands on bottom. So we're going to put all 5 of those gray bands on the top peg. If you're using things like the holding sticks that I've got here, be mindful they are plastic, so they can break when doing intricate little adjustments and changes and things like that with them. So just attempt to be careful with them. Would not want to see anything wind up broken. And then take and put all 5 bands of the orange one onto the orange peg. Make sure all 5 of those are on before you take out your hooks there. So I've just transferred them, one from the hook and one from the hook. So let me zoom in a bit here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it around. We're going to take our hook. We're going to go through the 3 bands that are the cap band here. We want to make sure that the white band is below that. If it's on the wrong side, like if you flipped it this way around, you want to make sure that that white band moves to the other side. So you want that hidden in there. So we'll take that cap band there and we'll put it on top of the bands that you just put on there. We'll go to the other side and we'll get the 3X cap band from the orange one. We'll put that on the orange peg. And now we'll have a lot of bands on the orange peg and the gray peg. What we want to do is we want to go through all of those bands and grab those bottom 2 bands only and pull them up to the next peg. So I find it easiest to tilt it kind of on its side like this, go straight down, and just come up above the bottom bands like that. Grab only the bottom 2 bands, pull them out and to the next peg. This one's going to be a little trickier because it's got more bands in front of it here, but if you kind of, bend this back here, you can come down, you can see the gray bands, grab them, rebend it back down, grab that, and pull it up. At this point, we've got 2 bands on the bottom and we've got 2 bands on the top. If you grab the 2 bands on the bottom and loop it over to the front, and then we'll take the 2 bands on the top and we'll pull. When I'm pulling, yeah, it's looped around the hook, but I'm not pulling from the hook. I'm actually taking my fingers, grabbing right down next to the band there, and pulling from there, where you can see it stretching that little point. This has no pull on it, because that's not enough to pull it, and that would break your bands more so. So pull it down from the base, and you are ready to take them off. Either just take it off or use your hook to assist in taking it off. At this point, you can go and check out that all of your bands and everything's where it needs to be. Give it some flattening squishes. And then you've got your little slip knot bands here at the end that we just finished with. You can just weave those in through the side here. What I'll do a lot, actually, is I'll go like 4 sections down, and I'll just go right through the center there, because there's the 2 sets of bands. You can see me going through on all of them. I'll just go through all of those bands, grab the slip knot bands, and pull it back through all of those. Now it is a little easier to do this with a latch hook than with the rainbow loom hook, but as you see, it can be done. When you first pull it through, it's a little tight. If you give just a little stretch to it. It should mostly position everything right about where it needs to be. Might need to redo one section of it here and there. And that is all hidden in too. And if you've done it my way, you haven't done or used any C-clips even. I have a heart bracelet I intend to put out one day that doesn't use any C-clips either. It's kind of cool. Alright, so once it's puckering out enough on the sides with the white, you can go ahead and set that down. Grab your BB-8 and put him on top, and he is ready to go. So, thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed him, and I hope you get lots of fun out of your BB-8. I totally loved him in the movie and thought he was awesome, so I'm excited to make him and share him with everybody. Stay tuned for more cool fun stuff in the future. If you make any, give me pictures, drop notes, all of that stuff. Let me know how he came out. Look forward to hearing about him. And like, share, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Stay tuned to ShadowCat Looming, and come check out our store if you need to buy any supplies. www.partyon-supplies.com, and you can come buy some stuff from the store. Got like over 60 different colors of bands out there and a bunch of other goodies. So, cool. Well, thanks much guys, and I will talk to you guys next time. Have a good one. Bye guys.